Good evening, Dungeon Masters. I'm Baron Rob. A lot of DMs claim they'd love to mimic the open-world exploration found in The Elder Scrolls, Legend of Zelda, or Fallout, but it's hard to keep D&D exploration interesting if the Dungeon Master isn't using some sort of inspirational tool. Ironically, the HexCrawl, which is likely the best tool to enable this exploration, is poorly understood. A hexcrawl, in its most distilled essence, is the use of a hex-gridded map to help DMs manage travel time and upkeep consumable resources. Further, this hex-based overland travel structure facilitates a campaign's exploration aesthetic. When a DM knows how long it will take the party to reach a destination because of the subdivided map, the DM can use these distance as time intervals as a reminder for random encounters, changes in weather, and tracking proximity to interesting locales. Further, stocking a hex map with predefined encounters or even whole adventures keeps players engaged in this exploration process as the players move around in uncharted territory. There's a lot of debate about what size hex is best, but to facilitate exploration, a 6-mile hex hits the sweet spot. A full day's travel is easily divisible by this size, and it shouldn't overwhelm the Dungeon Master with too much prep work. All this being said, a Dungeon Master's understanding of the hex is best served as an abstraction of distance, not as a fixed size. More important than the hard and fast 6-mile measurement is the time it takes to move through the hex. For example, a party can travel 3 hexes of plains or grasslands per day, 2 hexes through rougher terrain like hills, swamps, or forests, or just 1 hex per day when moving through rugged mountains. If the players wish to travel more quickly, add an additional hex of movement if the players remain on the road for an entire day's travel, or if they're force marching, or if the party is on horseback. Lastly, it's worth discussing how large your hex map should be. Obviously, it can be as big or as small as you wish, but your goal as a dungeon master is to find the balance between reducing campaign prep work while facilitating player exploration. To this end, a 20 by 25 hex map fits nicely onto a sheet of US letter or A4 paper while still providing characters enough room to meaningfully explore. If using 6-mile hexes, this map size would roughly equate to the area of Ireland or South Carolina. A lot of people get hung up on what to put in all of these hexes, but it really isn't that complicated. First, lay out your map just like you would for any other campaign's design. Mark the locations of important towns and cities, roads, or any other campaign-relevant dungeons and adventure sites. Next, make note of the important factions or extremely powerful NPCs that influence the campaign's story, and specifically, where each faction's seat of power is located. Examples of these factions could be a powerful despot's deep state agents, a goblin warband reaving the woods, or a terrifying silver dragon and her cult followers. Once these locations are noted, you'll need some random encounter tables. These tables should be designed to tell the story of the geospatial gaps between those factions. To do this quickly, ponder what dangerous creatures live in each region's wilderness. Think about what kinds of business or trades the region's people conduct, and what kinds of commerce or industry the proximal towns rely on each other for. Knowing, for example, that in a dark forest there are dire boars, wyverns, and displacer beasts roaming about, that the herbalists use the potent herbs and mushrooms growing in that same forest, and that these herbalists trade their potions for farming equipment with nearby towns, all quickly fills in a dozen slots on the random encounter table. Next, add an entry to reflect a nearby faction's machinations. Knowing what faction activity is going on nearby the party as that party moves about the map influences this entry on your random encounter tables. A faction's at the moment goal during the campaign should be used to inspire these encounters. This random table entry would enable players to bump into demonic cult members who are looking for a sacrificial bloodline's child early in the campaign. Later on, once this faction finds the child, rolling this same entry might inspire an encounter with an antiquities dealer who wants to exhume a sacrificial ritual ceremonial dagger. It's even possible the antiquity dealer might try to hire the party to find it. Additionally, if the party moves away from the region where the demon cult is active, this entry automatically changes to reflect the activity of other nearby factions. As a follow-on, when meeting friendly NPCs who are rolled up from elsewhere on the table, those NPCs can discuss rumors about these nearby factions, or tell the party about interesting nearby locations. By keeping the world interconnected in this way, that mushroom hunting herbalist has something immersive to talk about. Lastly, it's always fun to roll a double encounter, so add a roll twice option to your table. Doing this enables players to bump into that herbalist, backed into a corner by displacer beasts. Creating random tables in this way is useful because it reinforces the narrative of your game world by using the relevant nearby story beats to build out the random table. So what are keyed encounters, and how many of them do we need? To take lead from video games like Fallout or Skyrim, each predefined key location should be roughly a day's travel apart from one another. To determine where to place these key locations randomly, roll a d20 for each hex on your map. For every natural 20, note that hex as a discoverable key location. If you're using a 20 by 25 hex grid like I mentioned earlier, this exercise will yield about 25 locations for pre-planned encounters. This many discoverable hotspots sounds like a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be. Remember that some of these locations in Fallout or Skyrim, for example, are nothing more than an abandoned hut or a cave with a corpse in it. Discovering a buried treasures map or something similar is all that's needed to sell these locations is interesting. Additionally, all of those random table dangerous monsters need lairs, and these lairs are completely valid key location ideas. The Wyverns have to roost somewhere after all. Another fun idea is to roll up 2 encounters and think through what the aftermath of these encounters interacting would look like. The byproducts of their interaction is another fast but interesting way to create these key locations. If one rolls up a wyvern and a hunter, the hunter's ruined hut with a shredded thatched roof and smattered blood all over the interior walls is a great way to telegraph these flying dangers, while giving the players a few abandoned rations and some expensive furs as treasure. That all being said, some of these keyed encounters should reinforce your faction's goals. If these goals morph into quests the players pick up, those quests should send players all over the map. Skyrim's story from the College of Winterhold is a great example of this. The story sends the Dragonborn all over Skyrim in search of artifacts buried in dungeons and long-lost textbooks resting in old crypts. By scattering these MacGuffins, faction goals can further enable the exploration component of the Hexcrawl. By placing interesting locations between the players and their quest goals, players will organically bump into the various hotspots scattered around the map. This further reinforces that interconnected open world feeling. All of this being said, one of the largest components about using the Hexcrawl system is the supposed lack of main questline or story. But this complaint reflects the core misunderstanding of a Hexcrawl tool. Dungeon Masters can and should have overarching plots. In fact, the Hexcrawl can make a quest's line's event schedule feel more visceral. Take for example the first Fallout video game. Right at the beginning, the Vault Dweller is given a Pip-Boy, a gun, and a cold lead for the main quest item. Then they're told they have 150 days to save the vault. Interestingly, Dungeon Masters can more easily replicate this long-term droning pressure due to the hex-based time tracking. This isn't the only kind of campaign upkeep, though. Factions can scale their goals as the party levels. Consider that demon cult again, for example. When the party is level 1 and 2, the cult is looking for someone of the relevant bloodline. When the party reaches levels 3 through 5, the cult is now looking for that ceremonial dagger to sacrifice them with. By level 6, the cult has built their summoning circle, and upon level 7, a demon army emerges through a hellish portal. Further, when factions have easy to understand goals, and these goals can be carried out sequentially, these goals can be modified if the player upsets or stops a faction on its presupposed path. In essence, nothing about a hex map stops a dungeon master from having an overarching plot. The Hexcrawl just manifests the plot in a different way. If you'd like to help me make more content like this in the future, please consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching, Dungeon Masters, and until next time, good night.